right now thinking about.
Hey, hope you're having a good Sunday. This is just a few clips from earlier today. Been dealing with some computer problems here. I don't know if some of you watched that little game live stream I tried to do. Turns out the CPU overheated a bit. I had to open up the computer and dust it, and I don't know if that's fixed it yet. Also, I've got a bad controller here. My disk drive had to run check disk when I started it up, so it's been one thing after another. But managed to get the live stream up and running for today, so I think we're good here. It's kind of a dreary day today. You can see we got a little bit of shower activity on the radar from East Texas down to the San Antonio area. And we've got this high pressure pushing southward, pushing a new chunk of polar air southward. And there's not very much cool weather up there. We can see lots of mid to upper 60s across Texas and Oklahoma. But for the big picture, let's check out the digital atmosphere streamline analysis. And you probably remember a couple days ago we were seeing a convergence line right along the Central Rockies. And then yesterday it was somewhere in here, and now it's moved out to the Lake Michigan area, down to Arkansas, and that trails down to Texas in the form of a front. So yeah, this is all a cold front moving eastward, heading for the eastern U.S., and it's being driven by high pressure, and you can really see it here. Very big high pushing cold air or cool air in all directions. Can't quite see that on the isobar analysis, but it really stands out here on the streamline analysis. And embedded in that large-scale divergent flow, you can see a couple of little low-pressure areas, one over Colorado and the other down in Baja California. So now we see a couple of systems to keep an eye on here. And further out east, you can see this easterly flow across the Carolinas and Virginia. That's given a kind of a unique cloud pattern we can see in Virginia today, and I'm going to show that to you shortly. In fact, why don't we just pull that up right now? This is Virginia earlier. And you can see this area of stratocumulus and stratus covering pretty much everywhere from Washington, D.C. all the way down to Raleigh and Asheville. And one thing you can see here is it's banked up right against the Appalachian Mountains. Very distinct cloud line here. So that kind of clues you in that it's kind of a low-level artifact there. And this is actually what we see in the wintertime a lot. Let me show you the surface chart. When we have easterly winds, we get what's called damming against the Appalachians. And you'll get kind of a cold blob looking like this. And you get a lot of cloud material and precipitation in there, but it doesn't quite go all the way into the Appalachians itself. It stays a lot better out that way. So you tend to get a lot of cooler air trapped back here. And you can be stuck with upper 20s to low 30s, which generates a lot of freezing precipitation. And that's how you get a lot of ice storms in the Charlotte and Raleigh and Roanoke area. It's kind of a favored mechanism for that. If we didn't have the Appalachians there, we'd pretty easily remove the cool air and be under the influence of warm air advection as the next system comes in. But back in Texas, you can see that that northerly flow coming in, and the surface front is looking something like this here. And we'll just take a quick look out west. You can sort of see the northerly flow here. like that. If I put the isobars on, yeah, the high pressure area pretty well stands out. There's a 1030 millibar high centered over eastern Idaho. It's a little bit different from what we had on the streamline analysis that had the divergent center closer to Portland. All right, let's move on ahead here. And we'll take a look at the forecast. So let me set this chart up so you can see that a little bit better. Have to move some windows around. And there we go. So then we'll run it back to 0Z. So here's the current picture, and you can see the front moving through Texas and Illinois. High pressure out behind it. And there's also this area of clearing of drier, milder air coming in. So running that forward, the cold front kind of pushes eastward into New York and New England. Very limited southward progression on that into Georgia and South Texas. So it's going to kind of stall that right there. That should provide a focus for continued showers along that. Then it looks like we do get a little bit of a push of cool air here around midweek, and that drives the front even further south. So northerly flow picks up a little bit. And then by the weekend, looks pretty clear across the central U.S. Got this low pressure area here in Pennsylvania. Probably going to get a little bit of wraparound in New England and into Ontario, kind of like that. So next system taking shape out over the northern Rockies right here. And it looks like towards the end of this chart sequence we get what looks like a little bit more of an Arctic push. We start seeing some anti-cyclogenesis up in the Yukon way up here. 1030 millibar high coming together, and now we get kind of a southward push builds into the U.S. itself. But we've seen that the GFS has kind of a cold bias when you get out past 300 hours. So I wouldn't be surprised if this changes between now and then. Then that hurricane, look at that. Look down in Dominican Republic. GFS decided to recurve that northward. So it's going a little further east than what we saw earlier. Not even coming on shore and into the eastern U.S. But this is quite a ways out. This could change. So we're seeing a trend of the models moving the hurricanes further eastward with each run, but that could always start to shift backwards. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on that there. And then just a quick look at the upper level pattern. We start out with kind of a long wave trough across the long wave ridge across the central U.S., and then a trough offshore, and then another trough off the east coast. So these these major shortwave troughs across Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and this cutoff flow, this is kind of embedded in that long wave ridge. And then over next week we see the next trough moving on shore. And it continues, looks like it building through here over the weekend. And we see it move inland. So looks like kind of a general tendency towards troughing in the western U.S. That'll probably keep conditions kind of on the cool side around next weekend across much of the U.S., especially as we build this next ridge in. So there's this will help push some cool air southward if that pans out. And then we're getting out to 340 hours, so that's kind of up in the air there. And we'll go ahead and do our segment here real quick. Probably know what that music means. This is going to be our little geography section, where we learn a little bit about different places around the U.S. and how that affects weather. Well, I kind of slapped this together, so this doesn't affect weather too much, but it's still kind of interesting. So what are we seeing here? It looks kind of like a marsh, maybe. Does any of that look familiar? Some of you might think Florida, maybe. You can definitely see some brackish water right there. So now you're probably starting to think maybe the Gulf of Mexico. Yep, I didn't trick you this time. Yeah, it's definitely Gulf of Mexico. We were looking at this area here. Oh, there goes my printer there for some reason. This region right here, this is Louisiana. It's a very alluvial type terrain. In other words, we get silt and sand carried down from through the Red River and the Mississippi River, and it gets kind of dumped here, and it progressively builds up over millions of years, a long time. And so we get a very sandy terrain there, very like the sand goes down many miles. And as a consequence, you can't really, a lot of the development is well inland. We don't have very much development near the coast because it's very brackish, very flat, and very marshy. And you can actually go 70 miles southeast of New Orleans and still be on land. It goes that far out. There used to be a radiosonde site right here called Boothville. And that was a great site for sampling air masses in the Gulf. But the bean counters decided to move that inland, and they moved that back to Slidell, which is way up off the top. If you ask me, they kind of wrecked the upper air network back in the 90s. We used to have better coverage. The sites that we had Longview, we had Stephenville, we had Victoria, we had Del Rio, we had Lake Charles, Little Rock, Oklahoma City, Midland. See, there's a lot of good coverage there. They scaled that back, and now what we have is, Fort Worth, we have Del Rio, we have Lake Charles, and then Corpus Christi. So there's a lot of holes in there. It's very sad. But that's just how it is. Alright, that's probably all I got for today. We got kind of a small crowd for today because it is Sunday. A lot of people were doing stuff today. I did get an email from one viewer. She writes, I've had a lot of technical issues with your YouTube videos just today. That was yesterday. I go to play, but sometimes it just sends up screen not online yet. Tap to reload, which still nothing plays. I try to rewatch tonight's video, and it will play for 15 seconds and kick me out. Just some feedback. I cannot yet comment while live. If y'all have any ideas what's going on there, please let me know, because I don't really have a lot of this figured out, and YouTube is also new to me. A lot of you might watch a lot of live streams and know what's going on. It might just be a little isolated instance from yesterday, but if you think you know what it is, send me an email and I'll see if I can pass it on. So I think we're done here for Sunday. Hope to see you tomorrow at the same time, 8 o'clock. Thank you for watching.